Hello, on this episode of the Average Lockdowncast, we're going to be talking about board games. Hello, on this episode of the Average Tabletop Lockdowncast, episode 8 it is, we're talking about board games. So we're going to be talking about things like Carcassonne, King of Tokyo, Lords of Waterdeep, etc. So we'll introduce ourselves. So I'm Sven.
I'm Gary.
I'm Ian.
I'm Ben.
Right, we've got through the introductions.
That was
So,
Aria.
yep, cats aside.
That was a cat's ass.
So we're going to talk about board games. Like I was going to say traditional board games. What we mean by board games is kind of your just straight out the box play.
Is it boxed game now? Is that the title?
I don't know because it covers so much, doesn't it? I was kind of
It's a
thinking about
spectrum.
this.
Okay, thanks.
It is. So if you think when you say board games, most people will think Monopoly,
yeah.
Cluedo.
So
When you say board game, the general, the guy in the bus,
Mhm.
that's what they would think.
which to be fair, I mean, games like that are the kind of forerunners to a lot of the games that you would the most. I'm not going to say specialist, but the more tabletop board games where they're
Yeah,
a bit
yeah.
more like strategic or but even then I mean there's quite a few of those games that we'll probably get onto as we discuss through this that are kind of crossovers and I think appeal to your casual like sitting around the dinner table on a Sunday afternoon with your family kind of games into the more hardcore kind of tabletopy games where there's a lot of strategy and geekery involved.
Yeah.
I think
And-
there's a quick leap into that though, and it's generally driven by time. I always think kind of like you hit something at the start of the '80s where all of a sudden gaming very much different. Because if you think pre-'70s, other than like your Monopolies and your Cluedos, and at that point I start thinking, oh, what other board games were there?
Well, you had things
know,
like Ludo and what was it, Sorry, and things like that.
Risk
Yeah,
was around.
Risk.
Diplomacy was around.
Escape from Colditz, was that late '70s?
Escape from Colditz, that was around as well. So there was, the board game for me. That like board games have always been part of my life. I'm a '70s child as well. But board games have all been around. Like I remember having copies of Babel, Mastermind.
Yes.
There was a great one. Never could get.
So it was the classic trinity for me. It was Ludo, Cluedo, and Monopoly were kind of the three
They
that
missed
were
the trick
that
not
were in the
rhyming
house.
it, didn't?
Yeah.
See, yeah, I mean, we were the same in our household. I mean, we always had board games, and it was always the Christmas thing. You'd get board games for Christmas, and then, I mean, my gran used to drag me around jumble sales and car boot sales every weekend when I was a kid, and so I would always come back with some, random board game or some old school board game that I'd picked up. I still remember, and I wish I still had it now because it would be probably worth a fortune. But I had like one of the first Monopoly sets that was released in the UK. This set bought at the car boot sale for like 50 pence, and it was one of the first sets out. Um, in the box, not pristine, but everything was there, and it was like different. So all the pieces were the original pieces, so you could see the evolution of the pieces that we used to play with in the 70s and 80s copies. But yeah, so we always had like board games like that, and it was always a big Christmas thing. And then, I mean, you'd get all the TV tie-ins and stuff like that. Like every year, there'd be like a TV times board game, or whatever.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, I remember. Oh, go on.
no, I was gonna say yeah, and obviously that then I think there was something about board games and card games that always stuck with us. But then apart from the few odd games here and there that we had that were normally tie-ins to other things, like other war games or that we were playing. It wasn't until about maybe 8, 9 year ago that I really started like heavily investing in like games, and it was around about the time that like there seemed to be a boom in tabletop gaming. So there was a lot of little independent shops were setting up, and like Will Wheaton's tabletop,
Kickstarter,
Yeah.
all those
They
kind of
put- they
things were
did the
kind of coming around at that
crowdfund
time.
revolution. Yeah.
Board game cafes was the revolution when you started seeing them around. Place to go and hang out, have a cup of coffee, play a game.
Yeah.
How
Well, even-
revolutionary.
Yeah. Tell us interesting ones. You don't get so much up here. There's I know a really wonderful gentleman called Robin Dews from Games Workshop. Lovely chap. Really, really lovely fellow. One of my favourite people I encountered at Games Workshop. He's a huge Go fanatic. Loves Go. And there's a Go night at the local board game cafe, and there's several Go competitions on in Nottingham and stuff like that. And that's an ancient board game, and considered one of the most strategic games in the world.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how much light is getting shone onto board games. And I think it's really interesting from where it was.
I think it's one of those things. I mean, I remember going to, like, when I was at university, and it was more wargaming that I was doing. So, I mean, we talked at length in previous episodes about Games Workshop modeling, so I won't go down that. But that was more what I was into, and roleplay. And it's just thinking back that there were always those board games that were usually behind they not often out in the main store, but they were often behind the counter or at the high shelves, and it was so that there was clearly something. There've always clearly been something going on there, but it's only in the last, let's just say, Sven, maybe 10 years that it feels like it's having this big resurgence, or it's becoming more.
I mean, I've been putting some thought on it because I kind of got into serious gaming in '80. I remember it distinctly. And I remember buying Talisman.
Good game, yeah.
And I think that might even have second Talisman.
No,
Possibly first, but probably first. Yeah, with the cardboard cutouts and cardboard figures. But that style of game,
years.
that's been around for Fiska's been around for years, and diplomacy. So I think what changed again is board game cafes and media perception of what is. We all know that geekery and nerdery is now incredibly.
Yeah.
That's probably got a big part to play in it, to be honest.
Yeah, and press, the way that the press hated gaming has changed massively. A lot to do with the way that computer games are viewed, and kind of that more mainstream aspect. And board games are kind of riding that wave, the same as role play games and Warhammer games. And
I think it's. If you think about
massively more mainstream,
if you think about nerd and geek culture, I mean, especially with like because of like the rise of like general nerd like fandom and geek fandom, really. You got your shops like Traveling Man and Forbidden Planet and that, which would always stock all those kind of things, as well as your role play books. So you get like someone who's a Harry Potter fan goes into Forbidden Planet to look at all the Harry Potter merchandise, and then having a wander in the shop might pop downstairs to see what's down there, and then or pop into the game section to see what's in there, and then next thing you know they're going, okay, there's a game here that looks quite interesting. I used to play Monopoly, and so there was a lot of crossover there, and I think as you say, there was a mainstream, I think, shift in perception. If like even thinking back to like the way that D&D players and that were traditionally mocked, and gamers are traditionally mocked in modern culture. I mean, if you think back to the IT crowd, where Moss and his friends had their board game review channel, and it's gone the other way now. And again, it's because of things like it's people like Felicia Day doing like the Geek and Sundry channel, and then getting all these celebs on, and people you go, oh well, there's this thing you go, well, if people like Seth Green and that are really into gaming culture, maybe it's okay for me to get into it, and it made it more widespread, as well as, I mean, there was that tabletop effect when that show was on YouTube. It was a case of whatever game was on that episode basically became high demand. And to the point where some of the games just sold out and you couldn't get them because he was playing games that had gone out of print 2 or 3 years ago, and all of a sudden, like, there was one of the games I really wanted, and I managed to find a copy of it, and it was quite cheap. But the Unspeakable Words was one of the games where it was a game that was out of print, I think, when he put it on the show, and the prices on Amazon went up to like 160, 170 pound for a game that's essentially a box of cards and some tiny little Cthulhu meeples. So that kind of that really pushed it into the mainstream. And I remember there was you know friends of ours who wouldn't be traditional like gamer types all of a sudden were like having board game nights and things like that, and were asking us for
Yeah,
recommendations on games. Um, so I think
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
definitely helped the.
yeah. I'd take it back a little bit further, and if you look at the like, there's a societal shift, there's an acceptance shift. We've moved away from the dominance of the, you know, sports is everything. You know,
Yep.
you're still at work, like in a large office. We've all worked in them, and there's a proliferation of the football crowd, guys talking about football all the time. And I remember years ago, I would feel wildly not wanting to talk about that. And I've said this before on other casts we've done. Check them out. Where I didn't feel comfortable at school talking about the things that I was interested in and the
Yeah.
game store that I like going in, because I was like, I'll get picked on, I'll get bullied, I'll get ostracized, because culturally there was a huge. We didn't have an acceptance culture. We've got that today. And don't get me wrong, we're not perfect. There's a lot of crap going on in the world right now, which we know is appalling. But I think there's an acceptance thing that's getting better and better and better. And I think gaming's benefiting from it.
Yeah.
Because if I hack back to
I think
the
I think it's
80s,
it's a nice refuge, isn't it? I think it's a
yeah, yeah,
nice. But from what's going on, I know we've spoken about how desperate we are to get together and do gaming
yeah.
because of the escapism side of it. I've got some role play games that I'm part of at the moment. That escapism at the moment is
Traditionally, as well as the people who were into nerd gaming and geek gaming, it wasn't cool people like Joe Manganiello and his stunning wife Sofia Vergara. You know what I mean? Those types of people, they weren't associated with gaming in the 80s at all. And if they did, everyone would have been like, yeah, whatever, and it would have killed their brand. These days, it's totally acceptable. But we've all been in gaming circles, and most people who are into the gaming that we've enjoyed, and even board gaming, generally seen as a bit nerdy and a bit geeky, and people are generally a bit more socially awkward. So the interesting one for me is I'll take it back to the 80s, and I'll think about advertising and how that changed. Now, I bet we all loved, and I know it's been seen, and we all love Bardic broadcasts. When you look at the Hero Quest advert, is the first real advert for a board game that really just stays in my mind as like, well, I remember the Escape from Colditz being advertised on TV.
I
You
remember
know,
the Escape from Colditz. Incidentally, I have an original copy of Escape from Colditz in
I'm
perfect
so
condition
glad they
still.
reproduced it. I'm this close to buying it.
Oh, it is.
But
But we'll get on to what good
we'll get
games
onto that.
are and stuff in a bit.
We'll get
Yeah.
onto that. But I think when you look at the 80s, you had your traditional games, which your Monopolies, your Cluedos, you had a little bit of game of life. But then you start seeing things coming in the mid to late 80s, like Trivial Pursuit, which actually was like dinner party, wine party game, and so a more adult orientated game, and actually became okay for adults to game as well. But during the 80s and during the late 70s, you also had these rich game of very intense, very detailed strategy games, the squad leader games, things like that, which were
Yeah, yeah.
very, you'd consider it as more academic side of war gaming. It was like it's almost like your Kriegspiel to a degree, but on a board setup, and they were really complex games. I looked at those in gaming stores and went, oof, not only were they expensive, they looked like a lot of work and a lot of brain power to use. They really did, and I think you see through the 80s things like Axis and Allies takes an appearance, and I think the
Yeah.
TV advertising of certain board games really transformed what we think about a game today and where we are today with the internet. Just
Well, that's it.
access,
It's
it's infinite.
accessibility now, isn't it? That in
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
old school, I mean, obviously the town I grew up in, they had one or two shops that sold toys and games, and so they were main chain shops or northeast chain shops, and so they're only
Yeah,
ever going to stock like the NB games type of thing. The NB
Yeah,
and
yeah.
whoever else, like I'm trying to think which other big games companies there were at the time, but like the Waddingtons and things like that.
yeah,
So,
Yeah, they were the big boys.
but now because you've got specialist shops that are stocking all of like Because you think of some of the games that, like the mainstream, the big games that we're talking about, they've been around for decades, some of them, but they were just, you didn't know where to buy them, or they weren't marketed, or they weren't sold through normal distributor chains, and so you had to go to a specialist shop
I
or a
remember,
toy fair to get them.
yeah. I mean, I can recall from my childhood, especially like coming this massive the adverts, things like Connect Four, Punk,
Yeah.
and Buckaroo,
Yeah.
and Mousetrap, and all of these. And I remember my Mousetrap grandparents had it there, so that must have been around from like. So these games have always been there. I think, as we've talking on about, I think the acceptance way that they were marketed and pushed has changed. That's where the acceptance. Plus, I think when I was a kid, I was into board games, and now I've grown up, I'm still into games.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think it's a generational thing as well. We had this really big set of board games that we were in, Talisman, and now we're in a position where we can still play those things.
I think the acceptance or the accessibility is probably not just the accessibility of the games and the shops to people, but the actual tools and sources that are out there for people who have an idea to go, oh,
Yeah.
I know, I think there's a good board game with this concept, so I'm going to try and create. So there's, I mean, Kickstarter and things like that. There's a flood of board games come out through that, and my Kickstarter addiction is well known. Gamelin Games have made a fortune off me so far, given that everything they produce in the Tiny Epic series I buy
2 copies of.
I think
2 copies of.
you've got a wonderful ability to self-publish. I've seen some really nice war games rules at war game shows and secondhand stuff and stuff online where I was really surprised. I was thinking, I've never heard of this book, but the production values are amazing and stuff like that. It's just some guy has done them from his gaming. All the photographs are of games he's played with his friends. Really well done. He's obviously got a mate with a great camera, knows how to light it, and the ability and the technology to produce well published documentation and articles and books is amazing. So next level with a board game, it's there. You can do it, and it's if I went and googled now, print my board game, found to be something to say, we'll print your board game for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, entirely, and you're going to get that, and you just need the ability to come up with a game, your concept, and then you've got to art it, write it up. I think the art would be the crazy one for most people, because art. How do you say to someone, "I want your art, and I want to keep it probably free until I get paid on Kickstarter"?
Yeah.
That would be a huge challenge.
But there are artists out there that now specialize in working that way, because it's Kickstarter has created its own set of supply chain.
Yeah,
if that makes sense. It's really bizarre.
Social artisan centres like Fiverr, where you can go say to someone, would you graphically design this picture for me? And you'll have someone who'll have a stock background or something they'll do that they'll just overlay images on and adapt it for you and what you want. It's seemingly quite cheap. So you've got loads of stuff you can do that for. And so like the current climate for gaming is I think really great, and we're seeing some good stuff. I think, however, there's a backlash with this cottage industry. There's a lot of chaff you've got to get through to get to the good stuff as well.
I think the other thing I was going to
from Kickstarter.
Yeah, the other thing I was going to say about before we get into actually like talking about the games that we like and loathe and things like that, the last bit, or one thing I was going to say on probably why there has been a rise in the tabletop thing as well is that that we've mentioned this before. It's people our age who have been gaming for years, and we've built up quite a social circle now that probably has a lot of non-gamers in it, or people who and so they're not going to come round and play 1,000 points of ball action with a few beers. That's not going to happen. However, the amount of nights we've had where we've got like non-gaming friends have been around at a house, and we've been having a few drinks, having a laugh, and all of a sudden you break out one of the casual party games, apples to apples, or exploding kittens, or
code words, code names,
and you've got crabs, all those kind of things. It's like there's a whole bunch of, and I mean, King of Tokyo is one that always goes. It's so like it takes a couple of games normally to get the hang of the strategies and what you're doing with it. But then actually, there's a lot of fun in that, and it's the kind of game where you can play with a group of people who aren't gamers, and all of a sudden, you've converted them into gamers, and we've seen that with some of our friends where, we've introduced them to a game, and then a week later they've gone to Traveling Man or whatever, and dropped a couple of £100 buying a load of board games on your recommendations because they had a lot of fun. And the amount of
Yeah.
times I've been at roller derby tournaments and like in the officials room where someone will break out like Cards Against Humanity or Exploding
Cards Against
Kittens.
Humanity. Yeah.
I mean, that's the other thing. The Cards Against Humanity like model
The explosion.
has been taken by so many, and again, it's kind of like replaced, as you say, the Trivial Pursuit. Something like that now has replaced those type of games where you can break that out at a party and everyone gets drunk and makes offensive jokes.
Expensive.
Yeah. But I think that also is one of the driving forces behind things. As we've said always, it's people our age who've been gaming for 25, 30 years who've got a large social circle, and we kind of introduce people to these games. We force it on them because they come to our house and we're like, let's play this game.
Know something.
I think there's another thing as well with this. I think you're right. I think there is a lot of that social bullying we're doing to get people into what we enjoy. But
Let's
I think
not call it bullying. That sounds awful.
Social peer pressure.
Persuasion. Persuasion.
because if you think, I think it's a
With
reaction
Sticks
to
and water.
20 and 30 years ago, us feeling uncomfortable about saying we do this hobby. And I think it's a complete reaction to that.
revel. I absolutely revel in the fact that I'm a massive geek.
Yeah, me too.
You
Yeah,
know,
me too.
I'm just like, yes, here's my live roleplay, here's my tabletop roleplay, here's my war games, here's this, here's board games, here's that. This is me, this is who I am, and it's kind of become an identifier that's acceptable to be.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
whereas before it used to be, oh, I'm quite into like reading, going to the now you're like, yeah, I'm a gamer.
Yeah.
Oh, PC or console.
One of them, eh?
It's the elitism thing. It's creating clans and cliques and creating elitism levels.
I think you've just come up with a new board game there: Clans and Cliques.
The Kickstarter.
Yeah,
Ian, work on the
Kickstarter.
rules. They'll be horribly complicated and no one will have fun, but they'll be right.
So to drive
No.
this on a bit, I think the easiest thing to probably start with is going to be if we think about, what's your favorite board game? And this might be, ones you've played with us, ones you haven't played with us, or whatever. What is your like all-time favorite? Like if we were sitting around now and someone said, "Okay, choose any game. Everyone will play it." What you putting on the table?
Ben, I'm not going to say more time.
So non-GW because they fall into the.
No, you
Not
can't
all
do
the
that.
games. Because you could have said
I'm
Horus
sorry,
Heresy.
you can't do that.
You could have said Horus Heresy.
Talisman.
Heresy, Battle
Yeah,
for
yeah.
Armageddon,
Oh,
Warhammer
God,
Quest,
yeah.
Blood Bowl. Blood Bowl.
Blackstone Fortress, Blood Bowl,
Space Hulk.
Talisman, Space Hulk.
Right,
The original
okay,
Judge
yeah.
Dredd stuff.
Fair.
Yeah. You absolute elitist
Yes.
can't believe you went down that route.
They're not
mate.
board.
Oh.
They're mini war games at that level.
Oh, Block
Oh,
War
dear.
wasn't. Oh,
No.
oh.
Oh,
Who's going first?
hang on. Trolls in the Pantry.
Oh, that's another one.
Ooh.
Oi,
game
that's
that
my
was.
leg.
Oh,
All
that's
right,
my
Grandad.
Egg. Battlefleet. No, what was it? Wasn't what was it? They remember those little set of like one boxes they did, which was like the small version of Battlefleet Gothic and
Yeah,
the small and there was Dungeon Bowl, wasn't there? And
Dungeon Bowl. Oh,
They were-
Crunch.
yeah, they were good. Anyway, that was
Anyway,
changed
that
the
was
subject
a
again.
nice
We've even
diversion.
What were we
managed to-
talking about, Stephen?
We've tangent rambled off the question. Just clarifying
I
the
blame
question, we
Ian.
went in a
I
tangent.
absolutely blame Ian.
Because of my elitism.
So, I was going to say,
Who's going first?
well, I'll go with mine, and that way I can steal it because I know it might come up in a couple of yours. It'd be hard to do it. It'd be hard to do a top one game, but the game that if anyone said to me, "Let's play this now," I would always say yes. Is Lords of Waterdeep.
really high up in my list as well.
just because I think that is,
Yeah.
for me, it's like the perfect balance of strategy and mechanics, like things to do in the game, without it being stupidly complex. Um, there's so many ways to win that game, and it's, even though it's set in like a Dungeons and Dragons realm, the Dungeons and Dragons universe, it's
It
not.
doesn't feel like it.
Yeah, and there's so many nice bits of fun you can have with it. And I think it's one of those games where every single time we've played that game, no matter who we've played it with, um, it's gone a different way. We've all had fun. There's I think it's because there's so much to do in the game. There's so many different ways to approach it and to build your tactics around how you play. And there's all the mystery and the intrigue. And there's the bit where by the second turn, Ian's sitting there going, "Well, you've got the builder, and you've got the one that's doing commerce and warfare, and you've got that guy." Um, and
I
And
like
even
to
I've been
pick a
right
tactic where
twice in all the times that we've
I was
ever.
going to
Like I
say,
say,
you've never read mine right.
yeah,
and even without the expansion, because obviously we tried a few games with the Scoundrels of Skullport, whatever it is,
Yes.
expansion. Even without that, I think that game has got so much replayability. Um, and
It's
again,
very versatile.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean that's
I've
obviously.
I've never had a dull game of it.
No, I'm the same. Never had a bad game of Waterdeep. Even when we first got, we were just playing like 1v1.
And it always comes down
Great game.
to, even where you get that last turn and you go, okay, you know, player one is like 50 points in the lead. They've clearly won. And then you start actually doing all, like, counting up all the points at the end, and you go, oh,
Yeah.
they've just been sitting on gold. They've just been hoarding dudes for the last couple of turns. And you start counting your victory points, and all of a sudden it comes down to everyone's within 2 or 3 points of the leader. And the way it shifts and
Yeah.
ebbs and flows as you're counting the gold and stuff. That's probably why, for me, I think because I've never had a bad game of it. Um, that's probably my favorite game.
Interesting.
Yeah, really good shout. High in my list as well.
So
Yeah,
what's
mine
higher
too.
in your list than it?
So I think mine is significantly simpler than that in terms of what it takes for a game to play.
It's heads or
and...
tails. You just need a coin.
Hangman.
Tic tac, noughts and crosses. I was going to get American there. Tic tac toe, noughts and crosses. No, it was kind of the game that, and it was a tabletop one, but it was a game that really gatewayed me back into board games again, and really got me thinking. And it's also the game that I've used friends and their kids who are like, oh, they've come with a few card games as well. Do you fancy playing a board game? And it's always the one I roll out, and it's kind of gateway for them into board games. It's King of Tokyo.
Yeah. So that was my
Which
other one at the
is-
top with Waterdeep.
Yeah. And
Haven't played it.
have you not played it?
Not played it.
I
Oh.
have. Have you?
Even
I've
I've
not
played it.
met. I've met people who go really enjoyed that. I've not met anyone who hasn't enjoyed a game of it. Like, there's a lot of strategy game. People just don't like strategy games. I know a lot of folk who it's just not their cup of tea. But I've not met anyone who's kind of gone, oh yeah, that wasn't fun. You know, that because you can play it in half an hour. That's you rattled out a game.
Again, there's
And I let.
so many elements about that one that I really like as well. It's the press your luck aspect,
Yeah.
and the fact that there's different strategies you can take in the game.
Yeah. And
I mean, I've only
bizarrely
played it a
for
couple
me,
of times with you guys, and again, yeah, it's not been dull.
and as bizarrely for me, it's a game I can't game, so I don't have to think about that. I just play it. My wife's away in the background because she's never lost to me playing that game.
But it's, I mean, again, you got to look at who
Hey,
the designer of King of Tokyo is. Richard Garfield, who's obviously the brain behind
Yeah.
Magic the Gathering. So, it's someone who knows about designing
Done
good
well for a
game.
big cat, isn't he?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, even with some of the expansions, like at first there was one of the expansions that came out that for King of Tokyo that introduced these evolution cards where your monsters could evolve into, or your kaiju or the could evolve, and you could basically do various things. And some of them seemed a bit OP at first, but then once we got into playing it, I realized actually, do you know what? It just the players who go, it's just another way to win. The players who go down that route of trying to like roll your dice to get those, to get the 3 hearts to do the evolve, aren't then doing punches and aren't doing certain other
Yep.
things. And so even with the expansion that's kind of added new bits in, they did do a follow-up which was King of New York, which I didn't quite like as much because it just added in a little
That
bit.
have Christopher Walken on the cover.
That's just it. Was it based on the Christopher Walken movie?
Yeah,
It's not as
I like
good.
wargaming.
They tried to put extra elements in to give an extra degree of complexity, and it just took away from what it by putting the extra in, you made the whole worse.
yeah.
It was just
Okay.
it was I mean, it's a game I've played it once, and I've gone. If I wanted to play this kind of game, I would never choose King of New York. I would always go for King of Tokyo.
What about you, Ben?
This is a really tough one because I haven't really got favourites. Well, I've got like a big selection of games that if somebody said, "We play this now," I'd be like, "Yeah." But I think the one for me that crosses the really simple party game through to incredibly difficult strategy mental game is Codenames.
Yeah.
Yep.
It is the perfect play anytime, anywhere, any crowd game.
Yeah.
For me.
Yeah, I mean, I've even
Because you can play it when you're 14 points down, and it'll still be as much fun as playing it when you're stone cold sober and trying to work out why elephant links the 3 words of black, angel, and chocolate. You know, you just it doesn't matter.
It gives you that it's that real great insight into your friends of what makes them tick, and bizarrely their understanding of you, and like
yeah,
but
I love it.
It's one of those games though where traditionally me and Ian can't be on the same team because of the fact that we share one brain at times. And so like I'll just go
Yeah.
antelope, and he goes, yes, I've got all 7 of those, thank you. And it's but yeah, Codenames.
That's I mean,
I was gonna say it's such an easy concept. It's one where I took it into work for it like we always have a Christmas like 2-hour pizza lunch meeting thing with my old team, and I took it into work, and we played it, and everyone in the room played it and got it, and it got to the point where everyone got so competitive that everyone was just like, "Can we just extend this meeting out another hour to play this more?" To the point where they were all going away and buying copies of it afterwards to play with their own families because it's such a simple game, such a simple concept.
That was
However,
kind of how it was. Kind of how it was for us, though, wasn't it? You know, we had one copy between, and now I've got a copy, and I know we had that original copy. Now I've got one. I think Ian.
Yeah.
I don't know if Gary's got. So suddenly it's gone from.
I'm tempted to buy a copy. I'm not going to lie. I love playing it.
I think I found it on Amazon for £10, so it was a no-brainer.
I know that Codenames, obviously they've got Codenames, and there's Codenames Pictures, which is the 2 that I've got, and then there's the one where you play against. It's got an AI system that you play, like Codenames Duel, I think it is, or something like that. And then
that's for one person aside, yeah.
There's a Codenames After Dark or something, which is like adult themes or something.
There's a Marvel version.
And that's the thing, there's a Marvel and there's a Disney one, and I'm not too sold on the Marvel and the Disney ones because I think they're probably good for kids. Like if you've got a couple of kids in your family who are like, real Marvel fans or Disney fans, I think the Codenames Marvel and Disney would be great for them, but I think for us it would be
so we've got
it would be too limiting.
Codenames Deep Undercover 2, Disney Duet XXL.
There's bound to be a Codenames
Harry
not safe for
Potter.
work for
There
all
is.
the edgy people.
We said there's an adult version.
That's Deep Undercover.
Deep Undercover.
Really?
There's Harry Potter,
It'll say things like boob.
Marvel, Simpsons.
Simpsons.
It is in some households.
Depends how you say it.
Wait.
You,
Could be a safe word in some
So
households.
again, all of those different variants. Like we've tried the pictures one, and that was a little confusing, because it's a bit more abstract.
yeah.
And as we found when we played another art game that I was tempted to bring up, abstract thinking and visuals is not necessarily our strong.
No.
Well, one of us
No.
anyway.
Robot boy.
Definitely.
Anyway, Gary, go on. What's your? If somebody were to say, "Let's play this now," you'd have to chain yourself to the table not to.
Blackstone Fortress by Games Workshop. I loved Warhammer Quest when it came out. Loved it. I still think it's a brilliant game. I've cobbled together a set of it. Fantastic. I loved Warhammer Quest. I played a campaign of that where it was amazing. Blackstone Fortress is next level. And the reason I love it so much is it took the elements of a brilliant game and it took it another step further with a really brilliant AI system. So the bad guys in the original game, where you could have minotaurs, orcs, and goblins, you kind of piled them on yourself, but you could organize how that happened, and you could make it kind of fair, and they'd go more towards you fight a character, and they'd leave the wizard more alone. So you could unbalance it a little bit. You couldn't do it brilliantly, but you could. The new one is unforgiving. It's right. What does that model do? It does this. Oh my god, I don't want it to do that. Can't stop it doing it. Going to do it. The little eye charts are done for it work really well. It's really challenging. It's not easy, and I think that's the thing for me for games. I like the simplicity of Codenames, which is beautiful, wonderful, and hours of fun because of the simplicity. Whereas Blackstone Fortress is the other way. It's layers and layers of gaming because of the complexity it brings, and not hard to learn. A wonderful game. The figures, sorry, it's not just a draw for me, are beautiful. And I've played that game lots and lots and lots, and I love it. And if you'd said, pick a game, I will play that over and over and won't stop. It's the first game I've truly consumed everything for. I've bought every single add-on you can get, every overpriced card deck that Games Workshop produced. I've spent £10 on a deck of 24 cards that, I'll be honest, are fairly cack. But I'm so glad I bought them.
I mean, I've got a copy
Whereas
of
Ben
it.
bought a game that...
I've got a copy of Blackstone Fortress just from playing yours and going, I know, and like you live about 200 yards away from me, and I could walk to yours at any point. Lockdown, withstanding.
Lockdown given, yeah.
Yeah, I could walk to yours at any time and play on yours with your really nicely painted miniatures. But the collector in me went, well, I've got to have my own copy of that. So I've got my own copy of that. And I'm still in cellophane. I need to actually do something with it at some point. But yeah, just on the strength of playing it at yours. The number of times we have played it made me go, right, okay, this is the one that I've got to have in my collection.
Yeah.
It is good.
It is good.
Very good. I was lucky enough to play Silver Tower when they released that as well,
which was decent.
and I really enjoyed that as well. I thought that was superb.
Yeah, it is. I think the Warhammer Quest game originally back in '93 was in '93, '94, '95, whenever it was. It was wonderful. Once you started playing the advanced games, which I did, I had a level 10 barbarian with 8 pick fat dodges. He was virtually a walking pork pie. He was covered in that much gelatin. But like you had to have an insane figure collection to make it work, and no one had that, and it was inaccessible. Whereas this game doesn't do that to you. You play with what's in the box and variants of it, and it's very limiting. It's great, absolutely great. Adore it.
So,
I've got a follow-up question.
Well, I was going to do a follow-up question as well, but we'll go with yours. It might be the same.
Ooh. Well, my follow-up question is, so looking at our choices, they're all last 10 years, pretty much. I think Waterdeep's been around for a bit longer, hasn't it?
Yeah, probably.
So, taking that aside, what would be your choice that's not been released in the last 10 years?
Goes to,
I know that's a little bit more difficult.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say Warhammer Quest, although I am tempted to.
I was waiting for you to.
I'm not going to say it.
You're going to say Hero Quest?
No, no, no. I'll start off with another Games Workshop game. Not maligned in any way. Battle for Armageddon, the board game. Is
Yeah.
Wow.
it was when that came out a delight and a surprise when I worked at Games Workshop. I was like, "What is this they've brought out? This doesn't make any sense." And it's a variant of the Squad Leader games I talked about that were from the 70s and 80s. But what a bloody marvelous game! I did follow ones from it which weren't as good. The Horus Heresy board game was all right, but a bit like if you had a couple of card combinations, that's all you needed to win as the side. The Doom of the Eldar was good, just confusing. But the Battle for Armageddon game with Commissar Yarok and Gazgul Thracker fighting it out was just incredible. Absolutely incredible. And I'll be honest, I have been looking at it on eBay recently.
So if we're looking
Oh.
at games from like older than 10 years, so
One that's 11 years old.
the first one that came
I
to my
don't.
head, the first game that came to my head it's a game that is so much fun to play for what is essentially, does it even say what size it is? I'm trying to think. But basically, it's essentially a deck of cards game. You know what I mean? And that is Gloom. So a game, I say it came out in 2005, so it's beyond your 10-year limit. Is a game called Gloom, which is essentially a it's almost like a traditional card game that you like you would sit down and play Happy Families. In fact, it is essentially it's a take on Happy Families, but it's unhappy families. So if you're not aware of Gloom,
Mr. Bun the Grim Reaper.
well, essentially, if you're not aware of Gloom, what it is each player has a family, and the idea of the idea of the game is you need to kill off all the members of your family. So kill off all the people in front of you, but you've got to do it when they have the highest misery score you can get.
Yeah, you
And
have to make them as miserable as
yeah,
possible and then kill them. It's
yeah,
a very happy game.
and
Is
but
it this? It sounds like The Sims.
so
That was like 2020.
yeah, but what's really cool about the game is so the cards are printed on on
I
transparent.
apologise for that.
The hopefully we'll still be able to have a year left to upload this too because the way it's going. Topical humor aside.
Right, let's get away from the politics. This is a
Yep.
non-political.
So the cards
Harry
themselves
frozen? No, he
are
hasn't.
printed on transparent like plastic
Yeah.
with like there's certain segments of the cards, and so as you stack cards on top, they will cover over other bits of the card. So for example, I forget the names of the characters, but if I had, one of the characters there, I would say, and this is the whole thing. You can play it just straight, but whenever we've played it, we've really gone into the storytelling aspect. So we can go, little Johnny, he's in the garden and he gets bothered by bees, and there might be a card called Bothered by Bees, and you put that card on top of him, and that'll overlay his portrait, and it'll put a little negative symbol, it's like -15. So if I kill him off at that point, he scores me 15 points. However, Ian could on his turn either play a negative card to his characters, or he could play like a positive card. So it could be like pets a puppy and plays it over the top, which covers my -15, or adds like a +10, so I'm only -5, and so you're playing. But the fun part of it is telling the story as you're going. And it got to the point where, as you'd imagine, when the beers are going, if you are having a few drinks and you're getting really at the swing of it, that the storytelling part of it becomes more and more involved to the point where we were going down some really dark paths in like how we could link, because we always try to link the last thing that the person had played on them with the card that you're going to play on them.
Yeah.
And there's a few different expansions for the main Gloom, and then they've brought out a few different types of Gloom. Like there's Cthulhu Gloom, and there's Munchkin Gloom, Fairy Tale Gloom, Gloom and Space.
Was there not a Wizard of Oz Gloom as well?
No, that was maybe under
Or am I
the
getting that wrong?
Fairy Tale. Do you think might you think the Wizard of Oz Munchkin?
Possibly.
Yeah, but yeah, the
Oh,
the,
that sounds like a Kickstarter on the horizon. That
the main flavors of
Was
Gloom.
it-
I say like Gloom and Space only just came out last year or 2 years ago, and I don't have that in my collection yet, so that's now gone on the list. But yeah, Gloom is one of those ones. It's straight at the top of my head, thinking about other games where we've had so much fun playing them, and again they've got a lot of playability. Maybe not as much as something like Waterdeep, because again, eventually, they're going to hit the same story things, and it's probably one you'd bring out every 6 months to play, so that you get like a fresh stab at it again. That was mine, Gloom.
you've forgotten it enough,
Yeah.
basically. Yeah.
I really like Gloom, but and I'll be a little. This is my one critique.
Criticism.
Was correct. Critique. Criticism. That's the word I was looking for. I knew it was almost close. My one criticism of it is actually without that storytelling, fairly dull
Yeah.
card game.
As I say, you could play it straight as a tactical
It's just
game.
a case of I'm playing. Oh, this guy's now bothered by bees. He's now worth -15.
Yeah.
As in, no storytelling. It is just I'm just playing
Pure
this card.
rules.
Yeah.
That's dumb, though, isn't it?
That's you though. You're like the Matrix when it comes to rules. I don't see
All
a
I see
beautiful
is the
painted
rules.
in it. All I see is the rules. Lines of code.
Oh, look, people having fun behind the rules, but they're doing it wrong. I need them to align. So mine is, again, I think 2005. I had to check there just to make sure. It certainly seemed a while ago, but originally 1987 is the make sure you've got a full afternoon's worth of maybe 4 hours to play Arkham Horror
Yeah.
Oh,
from the
Yeah.
Cthulhu Mythos. Fantastic game. Another one of those toughy, spiraling out of control very quickly before you win, and that real panic of, oh god, there's actually just too much to do to try. You can't stem the tide, so you're actually just trying to race against it. Brilliant. I've played so many games of that with, Sven and people in this group and sort of other gaming groups through the years. Thank you, dear. But I just love it. But it's not a. I think a lot of the games that we've talked about tonight are. I've got an hour or two. Kind of squeeze them in. Arkham Horror is okay. Everyone, we need to set aside 3 or 4 hours, and even that might not be enough.
3 or 4 hours and a giant table, because you need almost like a 6x4 playing surface because of the amount of collateral you get with the game.
Yes. Oh, and I mean that doesn't include the hour of setup time, just getting yourself ready to go.
Arkham Horror was one that I bought. I bought early on in my really amassing a collection of games, and it was the one that we played quite a few times. But as you say, it was one where you that would be a night playing that one game. But I do really like it. And again, it's one of those games with a lot of strategy built into it, but also a lot of like fun that you can have with a group of players. Because I tend to I do like co-op games where it's you versus the game.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
The other one I was going to pick, and I don't want to tread on Ben's toes. Pandemic? You weren't going to pick Pandemic, were you?
No one's going to pick Pandemic this year.
Oh shit! Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. Actually. Excuse my language. There. You might have to bleep that. Sven.
Very topical.
No, I wouldn't. Do you know what? Honestly, Pandemic isn't one that occurred to me. But just if you've not played Pandemic and you don't own Pandemic, just go out and buy it.
Get it.
Just take our word for
Absolutely
it. Just go and get it.
I mean, you live in it, so you might as well go and play it.
Just how could we forget Pandemic? How could I? It's really difficult for me to pick one. Because I love Escape from Colditz. I think Escape from Colditz is an almost perfect game, especially if you kind of role play it a bit. You have, you add accents and you have a German commandant and don't necessarily worry about the rules exactly as they're written, and you have a bit of fun with it. There's a game called Titan that I used to play many years ago back in Coventry, which was I remember it being a hex-based board game, and you move around and you evolve monsters. Never found it since. best games I've ever played. But for me, again, as Ian, if you've got some time and you want to put some time aside and you've got a big table, it's Talisman. I just love Talisman. And I've had games that have lasted a weekend. Started on a Friday night, playing one game through with every expansion, the full-size board, all works.
Here's some insider knowledge for you, and how it tells you how popular Talisman is. So the American market for gaming is quite interesting. In the 80s and 90s, Games Workshop struggled to really get a strong foothold in there. It had hardcore fanatics like it does in any country, but it struggled to become mainstream as it is in the UK and popular in Europe kind of thing. And part of that is because there was a laziness element that was always considered, where people didn't want to put the effort in America. They just wanted something that could play out of the box. They didn't want something that required assembling. For that reason, Talisman used to sell more in America than all of the rest of Games Workshop's games combined throughout the rest of the world put together. It was its most popular game.
And I can see what I love it. The mechanics
Take
are very
that, 40k
simple.
players.
The Talisman's a very simple game. I know it doesn't get the love and respect that it perhaps deserves, being like a granddaddy of those adventure character games that we wouldn't have Warhammer Quest and Blackstone Fortress, everything like that, if it hadn't have been for Talisman. And I will put my hand down there, say that.
Well, Relic,
but yeah, I love it.
Wasn't Relic a reskin of Talisman, which is
become
kind
of 40k University?
Yeah, that's become our thing of if you've only got
game of Relic.
If you've got a half hour for a game, we always go, should we have a quick game of Relic? Because we once played for 4 hours and didn't even get anywhere near the end of a game.
Oh no, like I say, I played for a whole weekend and not finished. But that was like a 12-person game as well. That was one of the things I really liked about Talisman, is you can play with as many people.
Yeah, I think it capped out around about 8.
And I love the fact as well that it was a game that you could die in, and then you just got another character.
Okay,
yes, it was a game. It was a game you didn't have to stop playing just because you'd stopped.
Yeah.
You just start again. And I've seen games where people have died and then gone through with their new character and won, because invariably they've pulled the prophetess. Just win.
I spoke to people who would play the game. They'd go around a mate's house. Be a few of them round there. They'd have a game of Talisman in the dining room, get drunk, leave it set up, and then pick it up and finish off the next day, and they play it over a weekend. You know, because they keep it going on for so long. It's such a became a little bit of a social event.
Perfect game for that.
Quite an interesting one there. So, look, when we think that we've covered a lot with games, really, for board gaming, is there any real stinkers out there that you really think, crikey, I wish I'd never got that?
Yeah. I got one. Firefly, the board game.
Yeah.
See, I liked Firefly, the board game. It was just a one that whenever we've played it, it's gone on way too long.
That's my big issue with it. It's a game that's fun to play, but it just stop.
I think my part of the thing. I really like it, and I suspect a lot of that is because I really, really liked Firefly, and I felt it captured the feel of it very, very well, which I think is part of the reason it never stops, is because you kind of get distracted from doing the main quest by just flying around being part of the crew and just doing your day-to-day stuff in your ship.
Yeah, like I say, that the premise of the game and what it's supposed to do, and that, and if you've got the time and you've got the time to invest in playing it, it's good fun. But the fact is, like the first time I tried playing it, it was plays for 90 minutes. Set aside 90 minutes. 6 hours later, you're still playing the blood. That was my issue with it. It's not that it's not a fun game. It's just you've got to be in that mindset. Like Talisman, if you're going to play Talisman, you've got to put aside X amount of time. these modern board games that lie to you about that.
Oh God,
They, you know,
playable in 45 minutes. 2.5 hours later.
yeah, exactly. Just be honest about it. So that's the one. So it's not a stinker. It's just one that lies
I'm trying.
until you get the expansions. At which point it becomes bad.
I'm trying to think of a game that I've got where I've waited so long for it, and then it's been like, or it's been really hyped up, and then it's been quite a disappointment. And I'm struggling. It's probably because I mean, I've got plenty of games where we've played them once, and then we've never looked at them again for a few different reasons. But I can't think of any of
I've
them
I've
right now that are
I-
like at the front of my
I've got
mind.
one to buy. I've got one that this will buy a little bit of thinking time. I bought a game a few years ago, along with my Warhammer Quest fetish. It's technically a card game, but it's supposed to play as a board game, which is Warhammer Quest, the card game board game. It was like a cross between the two, and I bought that. And the cards are beautiful, and the artwork's beautiful, and it is the most baffling set of bloody nonsense that I've ever read. I'm glad I only stumped up 15 quid because it's dire. I cannot work out, even from the start scenario, how it works. I have no idea. It's so badly written. And that was a huge disappointment because I'm obviously a big fan of the Warhammer Quest series of games. But that was terrible, such a turkey. But I think that was one of those that got farmed out to a different company. It was just the IP being sold on to a company that wanted to do something with it, but I don't think they did very well. But quite a minor game, but it just irked me. I hated it, absolutely hated it.
So I've got two, and for quite different reasons. So, and I've kind of already mentioned it. First one's King of New York.
Yep.
Because literally, I played it once and went, okay, this will never come out of the box again. Because, as I said earlier on, why would I? If I was going to play this kind of game, I've got King of Tokyo upstairs and I've got King of New York. It's not even maybe try this. It was like, no, it was disappointing and it was not as good as the original. So why would I ever open the box again? The other one, more from I was really hyped about it, and it was one of those tabletop ones, which had looked great on the show, and it became so difficult to find. So I eventually got a copy, which was Betrayal at House on the Hill,
Yeah.
Okay.
which is a brilliant concept. I love the idea. I love the detail in the game, and for those of you who don't know, it's a cooperative game where you're searching through a haunted house up until you trigger the haunt, and then you find out completely randomly, as the players don't know, that one of you is the baddie, and the game completely switches, and there's different rule books come out of this is the baddie you are now, and it changes depending on what cards have been drawn. So one might be you're a zombie lord, one might be you're a werewolf, one might be you're a ghost. And then the players, they get a different book, which you match up the haunt, and they go, okay, in order to escape, this is what you've got to do. And it was such a good concept.
Did they play that on Geek and Sundry?
It was on tabletop.
Yeah.
I was going to say because I
Tabletop.
saw that and thought it looked quite interesting as a concept.
It's. I mean, we should if we ever get out of this, I've got it, so we should maybe play it. The reason I mention it as disappointing is not because of its playability, because of the quality of the bits that were in the box for what you needed to track.
Yeah.
As in, you had quite a lot of stats to track, and you had this little board. And you know, a lot of these things are, it's like you put a peg in it, and that's it marked. And the peg will there's like a hole for the peg to sit in. These were basically little clip-on things that barely hung to the card, like a slight nudge, and all your stats would switch.
Yeah.
So you actually became very difficult to play the game because of the quality of the materials you were working with. And enough so that it detracted from the enjoyment.
Okay, so while you've been talking there, I've come up with two, and they're both from the same company. The one
He's going to bag on the company then.
No, I think so. It was now one of them. So the one, the shortlisted one that I'm not gonna say is the one that's been the biggest disappointment is Yashima, from Greenbrier Games, because I think that game's got so much potential. We've just played it twice. So Yashima, if you remember, it's the one where you've got the other like Kami masters, where you've got like
Oh
I
God,
do
that
remember
game.
that.
the
Yeah.
little master, and then you've
Uh,
got it's basically like you move around a hex board, and then you fire off different powers or different weapon abilities.
yeah.
And it was overly complex. And the problem with that one was, I think it was a Kickstarter where we got like the main Kickstarter game and about 10 expansions in one go. And I think it just got too complex. But the one that I'm going to put first from that one, and I think it might have been one of my first Kickstarters for a game, is Ninja Dice. Um, again from Greenbrier Games. So Ninja Dice. So at the time, I think I had about 2 or 3 of the Steve Jackson games, press your luck dice games like Zombie Dice and Cthulhu Dice and
Are you
the
going to say
other ones like
GURPS?
that. Um, and so this Kickstarter was doing their own for this game called Ninja Dice, which was a press your luck dice game with these extra mechanics. And on paper, it sounded great. And then it was one of those Kickstarter ones where we backed it, and about 18 months to 2 years later, the game actually showed up. And because the extra mechanics, so the way it works is some of the dice have lines on them, like a horizontal line. And so you count certain dice which are above the line and below the line differently. So how the dice actually lie on the table makes a difference. And we played a couple of games of it, and at the end of it, no one could work out who had scored any points, who had won, and why we were even in the same room together at that point. Um,
And I had definitely not at
That's a
any
harsh
point
review.
during that game shouted about whether or not the line being measured across the table and where the dice were was accurate
yeah,
or
and
bent. You
it
know, it was.
was, and it was
That doesn't sound like you.
in theory a good mechanic, but it was just such a disappointment for such a long wait for a game. And so that was one that's, even though like we got Ninja Dice plus a bunch of the expansions, and we even got like they did a laser cut dice box for you to roll in, like a dice tray that was at the great big like temple. And that's still sitting unbuilt because it was horrible to try and build it, and we're just never going to play the game again. So that would be, yeah, that's it. That's the one. In fact, I'm now upset that I've had to think about that game again.
You're right about Yashima though. I think Yashima could be a good game and it's worth giving it another go.
My memory of Yashima was identical what you've said, but the one bit that just struck me is I seem to remember because we played 2 games back to back, didn't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I seem to remember the second game at the end of it, we're going, oh, okay, I'm starting to see how this is coming together. But we never played it again.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
it. It's because it's one of those ones where there was so many boxes of it. It took one night when we went to Ben's and we were like, let's try this Tuesday night. And we played a couple of games of it. I think we'd played a game before that, and again just got nowhere with
I think
it.
we spent an
It was
hour just on boxing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was underwhelming, to say the least.
Yeah.
I think again it was one of those
But
games where there's too many mechanics in it that, like, or you're trying to like, it's a moving around placement mechanic on a hex board, and it's a deck building mechanic, and it's something else, and it was just like, no. Again, it's one to revisit.
So
It's
what was the
interesting.
question you were going to ask, Stephen, before I jumped in with mine?
So, well, I've got 2 now. One was
I've got
kind of
more as well.
one was kind of going to be based on what Ian was saying before about when he was talking about King of Tokyo and how it's a game that he's used to introduce to people. So that was it was going to leave me in a question of, for the rest of us, I guess, unless Ian's got any others. If you've got a bunch of mates who go to you and say, "You're the gaming nerd, what's a good game for us to start on with?" And what would be the game that you basically take and introduce someone to gaming? So you go, okay, we're going to play this, and it's got the right balance of fun and gaming mechanics without being too heavy that, an average group of like non-gamers would probably be able to take to and play and enjoy over an evening.
And not something we've mentioned already?
I mean, if is there something you want to mention already? Because I know like Code Games is popular for that. As I said, I took that to work and got the chaps at work playing that.
Yeah.
And obviously Ian was saying about King of Tokyo.
Ooh, that's a tough one.
So I think my two go-tos are, and I will expand it, for the fairly new to gaming, or just the I'm going to a party where we don't normally play games, but I'm going to take something with me just to introduce them to something new. That kind of going, that'd be Codenames. Every single time I'd take Codenames with me, just because it's very, very easy to break out and get people going with it. Families with kids of multiple ages, it's King of Tokyo.
Ooh, I'm gonna try and one up you there. Munchkin.
Yeah, okay.
Munchkin. I know it's more of a card game, but it's got the feel of a board game to it, with a scoring system and the way it works.
Yeah,
I think it counts in
doesn't
the
feel-
boxed board game, so and if you buy the deluxe edition, it does have a board.
So Munchkin for me is something where it's got that feel of a board game that you could certainly for a family you could play, and it's quite interesting. It's got lots of things that would appeal across a wide range of people.
And it's got all the
For me,
crossover as well. The crossover IP of Munchkin, like Axe Cop, Wizard of Oz, zombies, superheroes.
the new 40k one.
Yeah.
I think my final one, just as a introduce people to cooperative gaming, for the kind of those is, and we've not touched on it, and it's just because I was thinking about it earlier on. Castle Panic.
I was just about to say that.
Don't know that.
The only thing
Two minds.
why Castle Panic, I think, is a really
This
good
is why
one.
we don't get to play Codenames together.
Yeah, why I was going to say Castle Panic, just to steal your thunder.
2 minds, 1 brain cell is what I was going for, Ben.
Yeah, that's pretty fair.
That's an odd video.
The why Castle Panic, I think, works really well, and you've got as long as you've got someone like the experienced player knows how to run it, is that because it's co-op, the experienced player can guide everyone through on the first couple of turns as to what strategically good to do. Where it can fall down is I've seen it played where one person just essentially sits there and dictates, right, you trade the green archer for the blue swordsman, then you do that, and you do that, and then everyone else at that point is just essentially handing cards around. Whereas, like, we've played a lot of time when we've played it, if we played it with like newer players, it's trying to give them the space to step in, because that is one where one person could essentially just dictate the game, and you're just playing solitaire with helpers. But it's a really good game because it's such a simple concept, and because it's co-op, and there's a sense of jeopardy about it. Like when you start getting near the end of the decks and you're getting all the big things coming out to attack you and things like that, and it's nice for that.
So again, I'm a little undecided because you've got things like Apples to Apples, really good party style game, or two. I've got two, and I don't know. I'm very much like this on both because they're very, very different. So the first one is Robo Rally, which I think is a superb game for showing people. Although it's competitive and you're playing against each other, you're also playing against the game, trying to beat it. And it's a really good one for showing, teaching people how to plan ahead and how to try and predict what they're going to do and how the environment can affect the game. I see Ian looking slightly confused there, as in having never played it. Honestly, it is brilliant. And I think it's the kind of game that you would really appreciate. So I think. And the other one is Space Team.
Yeah.
One of the great Kickstarter buys.
One of the best party games. And that style of game, where it's, you're trying to pass bits around a table and you can only use left hand here, and then someone gets sucked out an airlock.
You're trying to act like you're in space, having been blown out an airlock, and you're not allowed to tell anyone.
It was when we all tried to play that. We all tried to play that in
around your table.
in my games room, and there's one of the cards where everyone has to get up and swap chairs,
Yeah.
and when everyone had to get up,
Oh,
leave the room, swap outside, and then come back into the room in the right order, which was that extra bit of thing. Yeah, Space Team's a good one. I tried that
Which
at
made,
work with
given the
people, and it just turned into chaos. My old team
yeah.
leader, my old team leader just didn't get the concept, and he was just wanging cards everywhere, just passing them to everyone and not bothering with the left and right. And
Was there drinking involved?
no, this was at work, like in a team meeting, like as an icebreaker.
Oh,
Um,
wow. But yeah, so Space Team. The first time we played Space Team, it was probably it was an absolute revelation for me as to just how stupid £5 can be spent, and the results you get for spending that £5 wise.
so for me, there's a few good ones we mentioned there. Like King of Tokyo has always been a good one that we've always started off with new people. Has always been a good one to go with. And then obviously Codenames kind of replace that a bit. But I think for simplicity, there's stuff like any of the Love Letter games. So Love Letter is such a simple game. It's one of these games where I think it's been adapted from like a game that you'd play with a normal deck of cards. Someone's taken
Yeah.
the mechanic and then put it with some artwork. There's various different versions of it, like called Scabby
Yeah, like
Queen
For
and
the
things like
Queen
that.
is one
Yeah,
of them, and
and
yeah.
and so like the whole point is that at the end of Love Letter, you want to be the person who is closest to the princess. And so you played like different cards who are like, all like members of court society, um, which have different effects. And so you're either playing them because of the value of the card, or you basically play it as an ability. And again, it's such a because there's only like 7 card types or something in the deck, but then they've done 3 or 4, probably even more than that now, spin-offs of it. Like I've got a Batman version of it, and there's a Lord of the Rings version of it, and there's a few other different versions of Love Letter. I've even got a Munchkin one called Loot Letter. Um,
Right.
but that's a very simple game. And the other one, again, for sheer simplicity and getting someone into and this is one of the games where you can literally take it out and play it in 2 minutes, is Zombie Dice.
Yep.
Yeah.
Um, just for the sake of, everyone knows how to roll a dice, and once you've explained to someone, okay, you keep rolling dice until you get a number of shotgun blasts, or you can choose to stick and keep the number of brains you've got. And once you explain that quick mechanic, you're playing in 2 minutes. Um,
Oh, excellent.
and
Did
so,
you have 2 questions? What was your second one?
but the other one was going to be, and again, this is kind of based on, what I was saying earlier about going, like when we used to go to, like derby tournaments and stuff like that, and there's always someone in the pocket, and we've done it where we've gone a weekend away, with friends. You'll take something that you're not going to take a full boxed game because it's too big, and you just want something for of a night time once you've got back to wherever you're going to sit around the table and play it with a pizza. So like, what's your travel option? Like the
Um,
small size game that you can just take and rock out for a half hour while you're in a pub. Or I know you guys have, like Gary, you and your other mates have taken like full tabletop games to play in the pub while you've been in London and stuff like that, sitting playing Conan and stuff like that. But
Zombies, like the first game where it was like built on tiles, where you got to get to the chopper.
yeah,
The one with you got massive bags of just little white zombies. That's a
Yeah.
cracking little game, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant game. They did the spin-offs with that, where you went into the underground, well, Area 51, went to a military complex. It was good, but it wasn't as good. But the original game was just a fantastic little concept, really simple mechanic, really simple rules, hordes of zombies, and you could either try and work together, but realistically, you are always going to get the point where you're like, no, I've got an opportunity. I'm going to do it. Sorry, I'm going to
Crikey, there's going to be some beeping in this episode.
beep, 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 beep. That's your bit, Sven. Where you could nobble your opponents, to get some success and get to the chopper and escape. Brilliant little game.
So without going on about how much we love Codenames, I'll try and think of something else. So again, choice of two. Top trumps. Because who doesn't love playing top trumps? Unbelievably simple. You can play it with a group of people, and there are so many options for playing it. And after you've had a few beers, you just mix the decks up and go for it, which creates hilarity.
Marvel
'Cause,
heroes versus horses and stuff like that.
Yeah,
I was thinking about horses from that bus trip we stopped at a roadside service and bought horse top
what's
trumps.
the
and one of the things was attractiveness.
Yeah.
Yes.
I bought a deck of Top Drums deck from a motorway services for it was like in the bargain bin for 50p on the way back from a road trip, and we got the entire back of the bus all sitting playing horse top trumps, and it got because we played it so much on the way back, people would go, "Oh, you've got the Suffolk Punch." And everyone go, "Oh, not the Suffolk Punch, that's a 93 for attractiveness." And it was just like everyone knew the stats of all these different horses to the point where we could name 20 breeds of horse and how attractive they were and what the sportability was.
Yeah, it's brilliant. And oh god, my brain has just gone completely. No, I know the other one. Secret Hitler.
Yeah.
Except the massive box that it comes. I was thinking about that.
If you don't take the ridiculously expensive Kickstarter version you've got, and you find one of the
regular versions for the
one of the regular versions, then that is a nice take anywhere.
Yeah,
I've never
in inverted commas.
I've never played Secret Hitler.
Is it Resistance or Coup? Coup, I think Coup is what the other one I've got, which is exactly the same mechanic as Secret Hitler, but in a far smaller box.
Mini box. About the same size as Top Trumps.
Never played Secret Hitler, but is the bad guy Donald Trump? That's who the Secret Hitler is.
This is not a political pod.
You're not.
If you get us
stop
banned
it, Gary.
on YouTube
Stop it,
because
Gary.
of your politics,
you and your politicking. No, Secret Hitler. The first time we played Secret Hitler, again, I don't think I've laughed that hard in a long time at some of the things that was happening. Brilliant game. Again, a really simple mechanic, but a really difficult one to get your head around and play well. Especially with Ian's wife.
So, I'll move on quickly.
Secretly,
I mean, she might hear you.
Secretly evil. Secretly evil. Let's just leave it at that.
So for me, there's a game that Fantasy Flight Games do called Hey, That's My Fish.
What a great game!
Which is phenomenal. Where and again, brilliant little meeples. It's essentially a little. It's a bit of a faff on to set up because you've got to arrange all these little hexagonal or octagonal. Hexagonals, aren't they?
Yeah.
These hexagonal tiles out, and they've all got like a number of fish on them, and then it's a quite a straightforward game in that you move your little meatballs around to land on a fish, but when you move off a tile, is it that tile disappears or it is, isn't it?
Something like that, yeah.
So you can maneuver yourself to cut people off, but also trying to get the right fish. So there's that one, or the other one which I really love, and again it's another one that's a nice kind of introduction to tabletop games for people, but works on a travel thing because essentially it's just a bag of tiles. Is a game called Quirkle. And this is a game that's only been ruined by Ian's Rain Man ability. Because the whole point of Quirkle is it's like you're making rows of colours and shapes and you're trying to match them together and make so you can't have like two shapes the same on the same row and things like that. And what ends up happening is when you're about 3/4 way through the game, Ian has worked out by what's on the table. He's worked out what tiles are left in the bag and what you've got in your hand. So he's sitting there going, well, you've got a blue diamond and there's 3 red circles in the bag and there must be a yellow club. So therefore I know the probability is 96.1% chance that if I draw this out the bag, I will get the green square. and you're like, all right, and that's the game done. He's already predicted the rest of the game. He's mapped it out. He's deep thoughted the rest of the game of Quirkle. But it is a
So,
one where it's a bag of tiles and all you need is a tabletop.
in
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
defense, that is an entirely accurate representation of what I did. However, I did that playing game with my wife and her friend, and
Playing
they
every
both
game.
utterly destroyed me. As in, I knew, it worked. I knew what tiles it had. I knew what was being played, and they just played better than me. They just utterly, utterly crushed me by not being gaming dicks like I am.
I had another one to this pile very, very quickly.
I haven't had my go, have I? How long have I forgotten? You
I
go,
don't
Ben.
know.
You add to
No,
the
I was
pile.
going to. I was going to say Carcassonne.
Yeah,
I was going to
Nice.
say in
Carcassonne.
Carcassonne. And yeah, it's a nice small box. You slip it in the side pocket of a rucksack. Now you can
However-
have a go, Ian.
So mine, I've got a couple.
However, don't play extreme version.
Yeah.
What?
Extreme
I-
fireball.
Extreme
version of
Carcassonne. Extreme, yeah, Fireball Carcassonne with Gary. Just
Yeah. Don't
Christmas
set-
Day was interesting.
Yeah.
I'm not going to ask about this then. So mine, one that I find actually divides people a little bit, because there's some people who really like them and some who really hate them, and I kind of probably fall in the middle, is Flux. A nice little card game, and there's so many different variants of it, but it's a good little single traditional card game style box card game, and I think they're really easy to pick up and just quick to play.
Yeah, Okay.
Another really small box, and just it's a remarkably simple game. So much thought that goes into it is Get Bit,
Yeah.
which is you're essentially you get a shark and a bunch of little mannequins, tiny little
Are they
mannequins of different
Kubricks?
colors.
Are they like
Kubricks,
are
that's
they little
yeah, I think they
Kubrick,
are.
little Kubrick meatballs?
And the arms and legs come off, and you play, and essentially you get cards in your color with numbers on them, and you
Played this,
essentially
haven't
just
we?
you lay down numbers, and when you flip the cards over, you like if you've got the shark, the person next to the shark is number one. So you then arrange who, based on the numbers you've laid down, you arrange the people in those orders. And if you finish the round next to the shark, you lose a limb. Lose 4 limbs, you're out. If you play the same number as someone else, you two don't move. So it's trying to go. Do I play high? Do I play low? I've only got 6 cards, and once they're used, they're gone. So there's a lot of thought goes into it for quite a simple game.
Yeah.
That one that's got the swimming track that you're moving your people up. Played at yours that time, Sven.
Yeah, you in the deluxe edition, the little one in the tin, you get the little
Yeah.
track that you put them on, but you can just play
Yeah.
it without that if you don't need that one.
Yeah.
And it's a tiny little tin, as in that's a really small little game that you get. And the other one, which we've not played a lot of, I've played a couple of times in non-gaming groups, as in sort of family friends and that side of things, is Sushi Go,
Yeah,
which I think we might have played once, but
I've
it's a
definitely
little
played that once.
it's another card game, small box, but you're essentially trying to complete a sushi menu, and it's kind of you get a hand of cards, you pass the cards to your left after every round, and you're trying to get combinations to build up the menu.
It's a card drafting mechanic, I believe is what they call it.
Yeah.
I mean, the
Okay,
thing,
so I think we. Oh, go on.
I was gonna say, I think the thing is, it's like we've got so many games that even now you're just mentioning things. There's stuff coming back to me, so I know there's gonna be some that we've missed out here.
Oh,
easily.
absolutely.
As soon as this finishes,
So
I'll go
what I
next
think-
door and I'll have a look at my shelf and I'll go, oh, why didn't I
What I was
say
going
it?
to say is,
that?
I think we should definitely put together a nice list to go in the comments here and elsewhere of our recommendations of things to those to.
There's too many.
There are too many, way too many. All right, what kind of final question then? We can make this a bit of a quick one. What's your slow burner? A game that you think that that doesn't automatically grab you, but you think you'll be able to play again and again and again, and it'll still have interest and intrigue, and it's the kind of game that you might be playing in a few years' time, and it's still still all right. I'm going to throw Mysterium out into that.
Yeah, that
Is that
was
the
quite
arty
good.
one that we did?
Yeah.
The one that I couldn't
What-
game.
Yeah, the abstract art game that you just.
I actually was starting to have a fit over because I was like, it
Yeah.
doesn't work.
I think it's a really pretty game. I think it's really well put together. I like the actual physical elements of the game.
Yeah.
I think it's a pretty looking game, and I think it's one of those games that you just play and play and play, and it'll always add and have something new and interesting.
So I think for me, I'll say, and just because it's a game that I really like playing, but we play it very infrequently, and it's got a lot of variance and playability in it, is Smash Up.
Yeah.
Which is the where you take two different decks of cards and you smash them together. So you might have dinosaur pirates or robot ninjas
Yeah,
or spy gorillas, and each deck has its own like meta, its own mechanic, and then you play the decks off again, like the mechanics off against each other um to take over the different locations that you want and win the locations. And again, it's one of the ones where I invested heavily in it. I bought all of the expansions there at the time, and there's now about another 5 expansions out, which I've seen, and I keep thinking I should probably buy those at some point. So I've got the collection. Because every one of those expansions adds like another 3 or 4 decks in that you can then randomize in with the players. And as long as you don't let because I think once you've got the experienced players who go, okay, I know that if I take like say ninjas and
was
pirates,
that the one we played just before lockdown started?
no, that was Small World. It's a similar thing to Small World, but this is just pure deck building.
Okay.
I don't think we as a group
No.
have played Smash. You and I have played it a
Yeah, we've
lot,
played it
but
a
I don't
lot,
think
but
we as a group
no,
have ever played it.
it's one that we'll grab out off the shelf. I have to lock down and play it because it's a lot of fun, and because there's the deck building mechanic in it or the deck drafting mechanic in it, but without you tuning the deck. It's like if you play it random as well. So say you can't if you don't let someone choose which 2 factions they want, and we do it random. Um, it means you've got to kind of roll with the punches and work out how the deck plays, and um, if you've got aliens and plants, you've got to work out how they work together to get the strategies
Yeah.
right. But yeah, it's probably Smash Up.
I think for me, it's a game, I'm not going to lie, that I've even played yet, but I've watched so much YouTube content, it's unbelievable. And it's a re release game from the 80s, which is Dune, the board game, which recently got redone by Guild Force 9. It's a really intricate game, very detailed. It's got quite a small little board, you can play it up to 6 players, and it's intensely political. And it, Ian's going to love it and hate it because he could be playing a mechanic a certain way, but there's just enough flux, variation, and randomness to it where he'd be like, "Oh, that's so frustrating!" Like,
And it's affected a lot by human element as well, isn't it?
absolutely. So you can do things like a sandstorm will come and it'll just absolutely annihilate all his movement and destroy his troops in that area. And you're like, that's totally unfair, totally random mechanic. But then I could also go, well, Ben, you're the Benny Gesserits, and your advantages you've got, I could really take advantage from. So, and you can openly come up with like a political alliance across the table, and he'll be like, totally screws me over. And then Sven will be like, yeah, I think I need to get on board with those Benny Gesserits, and kind of like you start feeling isolated. Very clever little game, and
It's very much it's tuned. It's diplomacy meets risk, but with that random environmental element as well.
yeah, very
Really,
subtle
really
and-
naughty.
Well, I can
yeah.
see me getting ganged up on in that.
No, actually, you'll try and work out. The problem you use it does have humans in it and human emotion. I know you don't deal with that very well.
Cheers, mate.
But because it's got that element of where not a little bit of poker to it, because you can also screw over people in your alliances. You
Yeah.
can go, yeah, I'll do this
Oh
for
yeah,
you.
every
No,
alliance and every game only lasts as long as it needs to.
Yeah, absolutely. But it serves my ends. It's
Yeah.
it's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And very simple. And it's still played. You can tournament it. There's still people in America who tournament the game. It's mental. Mental. But that's a slow burn. It's not something it'll win you over in where you'll first play it. You have to take a lot of getting used.
So for me, struggling a little bit. I think there's two. One I've got. We've never played it. I've never played it. I've got most of the way through the rules, and there's a complexity. It's that frustrating thing of reading the rules has gone. This game is really, really good, but we've got to get through 2 or 3 really bad games of it before we all understand what's going on, and then we can play it properly. And it's
Cluedo.
guards,
Yeah.
and it just it's obviously in the Discworld mythology, but it just seems that there's so much to it, and there's so much intricacy, and there's so much like to do. But because of that, there's a load of different rules, and there's so many different cards about. And when you do this, you get this card, or you can do this, and then you get this card. So, and I've been trying to get through the rules, and I say that there's a lot of complexity there. There's a lot of different cards, a lot of different things to do. But there is that. I guess there's a little bit of that intimidation of the. We wouldn't enjoy the first few games of it because it would just be the. Well, I don't understand how that's working, and I would have to be leafing back, going, okay, what circumstance are we here? So I think there's a complexity to it that I think once you know what you're doing would just be fine, but it's getting to that point.
Understandable.
And the other one, because I remember seeing it on Tabletop and I thought it looked great, and we've not played it yet, even though Gary's had it for a while now, is the Dracula. I can't remember the exact name of it.
Fury of Dracula.
Fury of
4.
Dracula. Everything I've read about that game, it looks brilliant, sounds really, really good. I think we'd have a lot of fun playing it.
I have punched out all the tokens.
Good.
I'm also excited for your U-boat game. Get round
Yeah.
to that.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. How long have you had that now?
Probably about 18 months. Spent £110 on that. We haven't even tried it.
I mean, I'll just say Hellboy at this point, and then
I'll raise my hand to Hellboy. So we have 2 incomplete copies of Hellboy, and we've played it once.
Yep, we played.
Yeah.
We will play that at some point because
We don't talk about that though.
I just want to dig the minis out and play it. Even if me and you just play that, Ian, that'll be fine.
know.
Well, I enjoyed it. I'll
All
play
right,
that
okay.
game.
Even if
Let me
the
round.
three of us play
I'm out.
it.
And we'll play with your beautifully painted minis, Gary.
Yes. In Yoda style.
So I think that's probably a good point to wrap this up. I think.
We went on there.
Yeah.
We did. Looking at it, didn't feel as long as some of our chats,
it's a
but looking at the time,
big
it certainly
subject, though.
was.
Big
let's-
subject, and there are so many games that we didn't mention being into.
Some of which
Absolutely.
we've reviewed
Well,
on the
let's
channel. But yeah, so what we'll do is, I mean, again, as normal, if you want to join in the conversation, do so in the comments below on YouTube, or head across to the Facebook group, Average Tabletop Gamer Support Group, where you can chat in there about what your favorite board games are, which board games you recommend for starters and things like that. There's always people in there that are asking about good games to get going with. I think there's even a few threads that we've input on a few times before in the past. But check us out.
We'll start a recommendations thread as well. We'll do our top threes all.
Well, I keep wanting to do almost like the Top Gear used to have the different boards for like types of games and rate them and things like that. I've been trying to come up with a way to rate games because we've done a lot of games like Exploding Kittens and Bears
Top
versus
Trump
Babies,
style.
and where we can kind of rate them in terms of playability and score them and things. We'll do that in the future at some point. But yeah, head across to Facebook. Check out the social media at the bottom of the screen here: Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, hit the notify bell in YouTube just to keep up to date with these. And yeah, just make sure you tell your friends and let everyone know how good we are and how much we can talk forever on subjects and board.
On the different social medias that you can follow us on.
Yeah. But I think until next week or next time,
Yeah.
thanks for again hanging out with us as we've talked utter twaddle for the last 90 minutes or so.
And sworn more than usual.
Well, you know, look, because we're professional.
At least we stopped laughing.
I am ready.
Thanks, Stiff. Okay.
Right, we're going to need a moment, aren't we?